Why, hello there, Internet.
Yeah. So damn nerdy. I'll take you to the comic shop. I'll show you all the bills I drop.
Hello, Internet. It's time for another Wednesday's Serial. Today, I was in a bad mood, so I know that wasn't affecting me because this week's comics were rock solid. This is one of the best weeks of comics I've had, and I can't tell you how long. It's always weird to end up with one of these, and it's just like everything's just hidden right. Oh my gosh. So, we're going to get to it, and I hope you guys all loved your books as much as I did, and please stick with me this week. So much to say, and so many great books, and so much longer, and it was a lot of stuff that I came in with a lot of negative baggage, honestly, and a lot of it turned out to be better than I could have hoped for. First up, I think I mentioned this a couple of times, Shutter came out this week, with two creators who have the hardest to pronounce names in the biz, it seems, Joe Keatinge and Layla Del Duca. Oh my gosh. This is just a fun, crazy book, and a lot of people are complaining that a lot of the Image stuff is just this sci-fi or hard crime, whatever. This book isn't really... I mean, you could try to argue that it's sci-fi. It starts off on the moon, but it's about this young adventurer, Kate Christopher, who is kind of born to be an adventurer, but then she wants to go and do something else, and everything in this book kind of just happens as it needs. I mean, there eventually is some, like, mystic ninjas or whatever. In a weird way, I mean, because of that, it has some echoes of, like, the Venture Brothers, and also the fact that it's just so creative in that respect. Well, not that really the comparison's very light, so don't draw too much to that. But it is just a fun book with some energy, and there's definitely going to be some family issues, and it'll be really interesting to see where this goes, because there's definitely a heart to it and a point to it, but it's also going to have fun and be a comic book, and it looks just gorgeous throughout. There's just like this, which is a really quiet page, just is very incredibly vibrant, and everything in this is just something else. Owen Genie, I want to say, the colorist, does some stuff that really makes this pop. Like, in the really flashbacky stuff, there's some stuff to kind of make it look like an older comic, and then as you move on to the more modern stuff, it's more kind of drawn out to almost digital colors when you need it as well. And I mean, I know it's probably just digitally colored, but I mean, just like purely like digital lines and everything. It's pretty crazy. Yeah, I would highly recommend checking this out. Also, in the back, there's some like Comic Jam kind of level of comics that are just some fun, crazy stuff that some creators did, which I hope happens every issue. Oh my gosh, this is just a fun thing if you're looking for something a little off the beaten path, but still just fun and not, kind of in that, like, art house realm or super serious realm, which most things these days are. Totally check this out. Now, this next book, I had some trepidation of, because whereas I've been enjoying it, it has not been quite as great as it was lately, and there is a lot of hubbub about it, and some talk about the price, and I think you all know what I'm getting to. It is Deadpool 27. Oh my gosh. I know. $10. Y'all are freaking out. But the first thing is they make a big deal about this cover, which is a world Guinness record for the most characters on a cover. Who cares? But it is just kind of a fun thing, and they make a deal with it. But it's this crazy story that's fun and playing with the idea of Deadpool getting married, which he has before. That's apparently kind of slipped out of continuity. Whatever. And it's kind of a fun issue, and that's the first chunk. And then you get to the other chunk, and it's just a few pages per, but it's crazy because it runs through a gambit of the who's who of old Deadpool writers, and some of the artists as well. And I mean, you have Nicasia. I mean, you have Mark Waid doing one, which is funny because he did some Deadpool, but it wasn't a huge mark. Then I mean, you have Joe Kelly, Christopher Priest. Christopher Priest. I mean, that's huge. I don't think he's done a comic in years, and he gave up writing comics to go to his priesthood and basically dropped off the map, and they somehow pulled him out to do these 5 pages, and it is crazy. And it's actually the darkest mini story in here. It's pretty crazy. Pamela, Frank Terry, and then you have Gail Simone doing a couple, and even the Daniel Way one was really enjoyable. It was just this crazy thing, and everyone had a conceit around him, like, almost getting married or getting married to someone else. It's really crazy, and it was a really fun book. And it was just all the stuff about love, and it goes from, like, zany to, like, semi-serious to just playing it. It was just a sampler of different eras of Deadpool, all tied around a theme. I don't think I've seen a kind of big blowout anniversary book like this that stayed to a theme and actually done something quite as impressive. I think this is actually, in a way, a small feat. So this is definitely worth checking out if you get the chance, especially if you're kind of wondering a little bit more about some older Deadpooler stuff. This is a way to pick up one thing for $10 and get a sampler of a whole bunch of different crazy stuff and kind of see what phase of Deadpool resonates with you. I will say this, the Joe Kelly one is kind of verbose and not necessarily to what his old Deadpool used to be, so that's probably the one that's not very indicative, but it was still fun. So yeah. And then Daredevil, oh my god, Daredevil 50th anniversary issue as well, and it's getting outshadowed by the most important 27th issue in comics. Oh, that's funny. But this was a really cool issue. I actually would say the worst part of it is the cover. It's not bad, but it's not, I don't know. You have this crazy story that Mark Waid did about the idea of Deadpool being 50, which is really cool. And it plays with the idea that he actually settled down with someone. They kind of drop some hits, but don't exactly state. And his son kind of has a condition where he has the super senses but can see as well. But because of that, and because it started when the kid was only months old, the kid's really skittish around anything. He's really afraid, like, no sense of bravery. And the daughter of one of Deadpool's old foes drags him back and does something to him to make him more of just a man, which allows him to settle down further. But he does it to save his son, and it's really clear that this is an older man, and he's settled down with a family, which is so crazy for Daredevil. And just the tone and the pacing was really great. It was really interesting to see this swashbuckling hero basically be a family man, and just the heart of it and, like, the change in the character just resonated so well. And we're getting this all in one, what would be one issue, one normal issue's length is what I mean. And it is it's really interesting to see that. Also, they show older Foggy is much more fit than he used to be. And it was just this really heartwarming, incredible issue, and it's probably one of the most like family-centric superhero kind of stories I've read that's really resonated with me on a level, because normally I find that stuff super sappy. So the tone's right, I think. Also, maybe I'm just a little bit older now. I don't know. And then there's this crazy tale that kind of harkens back to Bendis's run that Bendis wrote. It's interesting, and it's not told like a comic. There's a couple frames surrounded by a long prose box, and it's told of one of Daredevil's last loves. What's crazy, too, about this and the Deadpool issue is these are crazy anniversary issues, but it's also kind of, love in the air, marriage, all that. It's almost kind of sad that it wasn't a couple months earlier, because if these were Valentine's Day issues as well, it would kind of be a cool little thing, but it doesn't matter that much. These are great comics. Take them when they come. And then there's also this crazy frickin' story from way back when Daredevil was pretending to be his own brother so that he could throw people off the track of him being Daredevil, but his brother was supposedly Daredevil. It's just crazy. And then they have a little promo for this Elektra #1, and the art looks incredible. But there's not really much about what it's going to be about other than, Elektra, which we gathered from the title. So, this is really interesting. And, this is a $5 book. This would be worth 10 as well. Like, this is just an incredible issue. And even if you're not a huge fan of Daredevil, or if you dropped off with the reboot, I'd highly recommend going out and getting this issue on its own, because this was just... this was something memorable, and I think when I look back on Daredevil, I think this issue is really going to stand out in my memory as something that is really something special. Oh, and at the end of the Daredevil issue, there was a really cool bit where a lot of the creators through the years were the ones in the letters column kind of giving a little blurb about their time with the character, and I thought it was a really nice touch to a big anniversary issue like this. Nightcrawler 1. I know this is going off a new way, but for me, Chris Claremont writing Nightcrawler seems like another big harken back. This was a fun moving issue. I know I saw some buzz from some people in the community earlier who weren't too taken with this first issue. I have to say, I don't know why. I mean, for one issue, compared to where comics are at normally, Claremont's old school pacing really resonated with me. I mean, it starts off with Nightcrawler in the danger room with Wolverine going through a bit. Wolverine has one of his angry moments, but whatever. And what was also really cool for me was Dr. Celia Reyes was there, who is a character from the 90s that I really appreciated. And I think bringing her back into the fold does a lot. She's not a character I believe too many people are familiar with. All that she can do mutant-wise is create force fields, but she's a doctor and she's kind of not so up on being an X-Man, but she wants to do good and she wants to help people, and the idea of her being there kind of said something to me. And her with Nightcrawler, I think, is a small but good interaction. And then you see Nightcrawler in the school. He interacts with Rachel, Phoenix-ish lady, and seeing him and them talking about the new students is really just a really endearing way that gives it a flavor kind of more back to what the X-Men's about, and playing off that whole Wolverine the X-Men thing. And in doing so, it really brings in the new as well, and it just feels right. Like, we're here with the X-Men, but this is more how I feel the X-Men sing, more how taking the right elements of the book from its Golden Age, which was Claremont's run, and bring that to the new, just really does a lot for the presence of the X-Men in my mind. And then Nightcrawler meets up with his old love Amanda, which was interesting and is purely something from Excalibur, I imagine. I know nothing about it, and it makes me a lot more interested to go back and read that Excalibur run. So, hooray for that. And then there's, the Banffs are there too. And I don't know how much of Amazing X-Men and all that is playing in because I haven't read that, but I feel like you don't need it because obviously I enjoyed it. And then we get a little bit, and Nightcrawler's off to his next adventure, and it's really interesting. One thing I do want to note, in here he's using a Screama Sticks, and he's not using a sword. And I know the swashbuckling thing was a big deal, and using a sword when using Excalibur does make a lot of sense. But I do think the idea of Nightcrawler using a Screama Sticks, which are just sticks, which is something that you use to more break down and incapacitate your opponent, makes a lot more sense than a man of God, especially using a sword, even though there's a lot of lore to say to the otherwise. Like, there's something in that mentality that really makes sense to me, and I hope they stick with that. But, yeah, this is a fun issue. If you wait for the trade, I'd totally say, that's just as valid. But one issue alone, this does a lot more than other modern stuff. So there you go. Next up is Batgirl 30. And this is a in-betweener issue, I guess. Margaret Bennett is doing this issue. And wow, this is the first non-Simone issue that's just been kind of obviously thrown in that really kind of worked. There's some reference to the Silver issues that happened, but in here some kids drum up the old Gotham myth of the Midnight Man, which is this horror story spooky thing, and there's some references and play with some idea of meta-contextuality and how horror stories work in here. And it's definitely a different kind of flavor to this. But it does do something, kind of tying some stuff together with Batgirl to kind of show that she's fighting this supernatural stuff in Gotham right now. And it makes for kind of an interesting angle. And the fact that she's kind of going on her own path separate from Batman and Robin is brought up in here too. And this was just a really interesting issue. It really had a lot of flavor to it. It had a lot of voice for Batgirl, and it was this whole crazy adventure of her dealing with a monster, and it was her saving these kids because that's what she does as a superhero. And I have to tell you, I couldn't love this issue more. I think it's one of the best Batgirl issues of late, and I'd really highly recommend checking out if you're looking at jumping onto another book, or you've been thinking about this one. This issue is probably actually worth checking out, though it might not be very indicative of the rest of the run. But if Simone was going to be hopping off this book, I'd hope this creator would be taking over. Also, Robert Gill, the penciler, does a great job and does some amazing things with the monster. It looks really terrifying and really different, and it's really a show of a creative artist who wants to do something with the form and everything. And it's not the most crazy inventive thing, but panels like that should do something for you as a comic fan, I'd hope. So, another amazing thing to check out. So the next is Batman Eternal, and by all rights, I was picking this book up but I have to say, this is the best Batman book I've read in a while. Basically since Matches Malone disappeared. And, wow. This is a very Gordon-centric story, which usually is a good thing, and it certainly is here. It has a cliffhanger that I think is going to lead to the entire run of this, but it's really jaw-dropping. I'm actually really glad that there's going to be an installment next week, because it's a hell of a mystery, and I want another chunk. I mean, it's not the most dynamic comic ever, but I mean, it certainly is a good Batman comic looking thing. It's dark and mysterious, but the detective's there, and the action just it just starts you off in the action. And I have to say, this is how you start a Batman comic. This is more how I feel Batman works than where most of the comics are actually at right now. And yeah, this is the best way I've seen a DC Weekly kickoff ever, so I'm actually really excited. It looks like they have a plan, so if you're a little hesitant, this totally might be worth checking out, and maybe it'll speak well for the others coming down the line. So there you go. Then there was last and least, Kick-Ass 3, the penultimate issue of Kick-Ass. There's a twist that really informs the rest of the issue that's pretty much right at the beginning, so I can't really dig in too much. But I will say I didn't see it coming at all, and this issue leaves it so that anything could happen in the last issue. I really have no idea, and especially with the fact that it is the last Kick-Ass issue, at least supposedly for now. I really do honestly believe anything could happen. It's all on the table, and that does make it more exciting. So we'll see how it goes, but at the same time, that's the penultimate issue, so it's all like, okay, well, hopefully it wraps up stronger. But it should be interesting. I imagine there's going to be a delay, because there's a little editorial at the end about how Miller just had a baby, so I imagine all this stuff is going to hit a bit of a delay from it, which sucks, because it's like, I just need this one last issue to come out, but maybe. I also can imagine that it's done, so we'll see. So this was a stupendous week. I'm glad for all of you that stayed till the end, because, I mean, man, I was just energized. I know it's been kind of a longer one, but also, I want to give a huge thank you to John Dacosta, DC Comics, for that intro at the top. Might be trying to play with a little more of that later. And if you have any other comics that you thought were amazing this week, please let me know below. Tweet me at magicalmatt42. Just, oh my gosh, comics, oh my god. So yeah, please let me know, and if there was some book you hated that you want to talk about, save it for another week this time. I'm just riding the high right now.